They brought moving boxes to help me pack my husband's memories, then demanded my house for the kids and told me to pay my SL's rent. Until the lawyer opened one page and I hung the keys inside. They came the week the house still smelled like casseroles and lilies, Shannon with a bright grocery store pie, Linda with a purse that clipped like a verdict, and a stack of flattened moving boxes tucked under Shannon's arm. She didn't ask how I was sleeping. She unfolded a box on my welcome mat and said the quiet part out loud. This place should really go to the kids, meaning her kids, and I could move into her small apartment for now, cover her rent, and visit on weekends so the transition feels gentle. Behind them, the maple tree Mark and I planted tossed shade across the porch like it was trying to keep me. Shannon pulled a typed room list from her clipboard. Who gets the primary bedroom? Which closet I could borrow when I'd hand over the keys? It read like directions to leave my own life. Linda nodded at each line like a metronome. It's what Mark would want, she said, as if this yard didn't know my name that I didn't argue on the threshold. Thresholds make people shout. I stepped forward, let the storm door click, and said, calm as a kitchen timer. We talk at a table, not on a doormat. Shannon's smile thinned. Family doesn't need lawyers. That's when I knew we would. When their car finally pulled away, they left 2 boxes on the porch like abandoned pets. I carried them inside, not to keep, but so I decide how they leave, and set them by the wall. Then I opened the drawer Mark called the quiet box, found the envelope from Mr. Ellis, and laid our deed copy on the table. Paper doesn't flinch. Neither did I. They came back like movers on a schedule they wrote for me. Shannon had the boxes already taped, each one slapped with a neat label. Master closet, kitchen, garage, keep. She held a clipboard with a timeline that started today and ended with me handing over my keys so the kids don't feel uprooted. Linda stood behind her, chin lifted, as if my porch had already changed owners. Shannon didn't ask to come in. She leaned forward like gravity would do it for her. She said I could have a drawer at her place, come by on weekends, and if I covered her rent for a bit, she'd keep utilities steady at the house. She said it like kindness, but every word moved me out. I let the storm door click between us and stepped into the glass. No boxes cross this line, I said, until we talk at a table. She tried the smile that sells subscriptions. We're making it easy, she said, uncapping a marker and writing today at the top of her page. A cousin I barely see lifted a box and edged toward the threshold. Something in me stood up taller than my fear. Set it down, I said. He did. Even people with lists recognize a voice that belongs to the house. I took my phone and calmly photographed everything. Labels, clipboard, even the way the box shadows fell across my mat. Because shadows tell the truth too. Then I told them we'd meet with Mr. Ellis before anyone touched a drawer. Linda muttered that lawyers make things ugly. I looked at the boxes. This is already ugly, I said. They tried one last turn of the screw. Shannon said she'd help by forwarding my mail to her, so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. I felt the cold slide in under the door. Do not touch my mail, I said, clear enough for the maple to hear. When they left, they abandoned 2 boxes on the porch like strays. I carried them inside, not to save them, but so I decide how they leave, and stack them by the wall like evidence. Then I opened the drawer Mark called the quiet box, pulled out the deed copy with my name sitting steady on the line, added the latest electric and water bills in my name, and slid it all into a blue folder I labeled home. Paper doesn't shout. It just stands there and holds. I put the folder in my bag, set the spare key on the hook inside the door where it belongs, and watched the maple's leaves turn the light a softer color. The house wasn't asking me to win a fight. It was asking me to choose it.mr. Ellis's office felt like a place that had watched storms come and go. Neutral carpet, steady plants, diplomas that didn't brag. I arrived early and set the home folder on the table the way you set down something that can carry its own weight. The maple leaf I'd picked up from the yard rode along in my pocket like a quiet witness. They arrived like a committee. Shannon with her clipboard tucked under her arm like a baton. Linda wrapped in that careful silence that means the speech has already been written. 2 cousins hovered by the door as if chairs were optional. The room temperature rose by a degree. The plants did not care. Shannon opened with what she always opens with. Children need a yard. Mark would want stability. Our family keeps homes with the young. It was a river of phrases that tried to sound like truth by repeating. Linda added the weighty words, tradition, respect, duty, placing them like coasters under a glass that still sweats.mr. Ellis didn't match their volume. He slid a legal pad to the center and capped his pen, a small click that reset the air. Today, he said, the room would listen to documents first and feelings after. It wasn't unkind. It was a rule that made the table solid. I opened the home folder and let paper do what it does best. On top, the deed copy, my name printed with that county font finality that doesn't need adjectives. Beneath it, the tax page with the mortgage marked paid. The electric and water bills that have been arriving to my name for years. And Mr. Ellis's own cover letter from months ago, keeping things simple for Natalie. I didn't narrate. I arranged. Rows, edges, sequence. Even the shadow of the stack looked like backbone. Shannon tried to slide her timeline in beside it. But on wood, wishes sound like thin paper. The boxes labeled master closet and kitchen rattled around in my head, trying to make noise, and then went quiet against the sturdier thud of the deed. Linda reached for tradition again, the kind that only runs in one direction, toward the person they want to move.mr. Ellis read slowly, the way careful men read when they know speed will be mistaken for bias. He placed the deed on top again, like a paperweight with my name on it. The cousins sat down without meaning to. The room shrank to the size of the facts. Shannon pivoted to compromise. I could keep a drawer at her apartment. We could transition the bedrooms so her kids felt anchored. If I covered her rent, she'd keep utilities steady, as if the house would forget who paid them before. She smiled in that trained way that wants you to feel taken care of while you're being moved.mr. Ellis wrote a single word on his pad. No, in a block hand that looked like it had been taught by rain. He didn't turn the pad to show us. He didn't need to. The room heard it. I kept my eyes on the page with my name. People argue nouns. Counties file lines. Every time anxiety tried to narrate the worst version of the next hour. My finger found the edge of the deed and settled there like a lighthouse finding its beam again. That Shannon's last try was speed. We can start packing right after this. While momentum is good, the word momentum in a human mouth is usually a threat. Mr. Ellis set his pen down, one soft click that sounded like a lock, and said the room would not be packing anything. Not today. Not after. Not at all. For the first time since the porch, I watched Linda look at me instead of past me. Not thawed, not convinced, just looking. The maple leaf in my pocket felt like it had more room to breathe. The meeting wasn't over. They hadn't yet reached for the checks that come each month or the story they like to tell about who deserves what. But the table had chosen its language, and it wasn't theirs. Outside, through the office window, a school bus sighed at the curb and kept going. The world didn't stop for our drama. It rarely does. Inside, paper kept its seat. When the house wouldn't budge off the table, Shannon went for the checks that land in my mailbox each month. She didn't bother softening it. Since Natalie doesn't have kids, she said, those funds should support the kids who do. She looked at Mr. Ellis like he might pass the plate. He didn't reach for sympathy. He reached for a thin folder with Mark's name and a paperclip that had been pressed flat a long time ago. This is the policy Mark kept current, he said, opening to the first page. He didn't add a speech. He read the line that matters in rooms like this, evenly, like a ruler laid on a desk. Beneficiary, Natalie Carter. He let the word sit where decisions get made. Then he traced a paragraph with his pen and read the next piece of quiet thunder. Benefits may not be reassigned. Any third-party request is void. No legal sermon. Just ink. Linda blinked hard, the way people do when their favorite story hits a wall. Mark loved our grandchildren, she said, softer but aiming for the same goal. He did, Mr. Ellis answered, and closed the folder without flair. He also knew what pressure feels like after casseroles go cold. He slid the policy beside the deed, 2 pages shoulder to shoulder. Like a pair of hands that don't shake. To Shannon's smile hiccuped, then tried to steady. We're not taking anything, she said. We're redirecting to where it helps. Redirecting sounded like what it was, taking, with a bow tied on. Mr. Ellis tapped the anti-assignment line once. There is nothing to redirect. Silence came in like a tide that had finally decided which way to go. The cousins looked at the floor. The plant by the window kept being a plant. I kept my finger on the corner of the deed the way you hold a railing when the elevator moves. Shannon cleared her throat and reached for speed again. Fine. If the checks are stuck, we still need to solve the space. The kids can't stay cramped. We'll start with the primary bedroom, and Mr. Ellis lifted one hand, an usher's gesture. One subject at a time. He stacked the policy on top of the home folder, squared the corners, and the room followed his lead. That I breathed for what felt like the first real time in weeks. Not because anyone agreed with me. Because paper did. They weren't done. People with plans rarely are. They would find a new angle, a fresh way to rename my house until it sounded like theirs. But the table had learned a word that sticks. No, when the checks were off the table, Shannon grabbed the next lever. Rename my home until it sounds like theirs. It's a family house, she said brightly, as if the phrase could melt ink. We're not pushing you out. We'll share. The kids take the primary bedroom so they feel anchored, and Natalie keeps the guest room for holidays. She beamed like she'd just invented kindness. Linda added the ribbon. It's what Mark would want. Houses should live with the young. Mr. Ellis didn't argue philosophy. He pulled the deed back to the center and placed a finger on the line that has more gravity than any speech. Owner, Natalie Carter. No co-owner. No trust name. No asterisk. Just my name in county font. This is not a communal sofa, he said softly. It's her home. Shannon's smile thinned. So you're saying we have no standing to allocate rooms in a house that belongs to our family? She tried to pour the word family over the table like sugar. I'm saying, Mr. Ellis answered, this house belongs to Natalie. Full stop. The cousins slouched back as if a string had been cut. Linda's gaze fell to the oak trim, landed on a scuff that reminded me of the time Mark bumped the toolbox and laughed until he hiccuped. She blinked and looked away. Shannon made one last spin. We'll just help her get started then. Closets, linens, the heavy lifting. She glanced at me, waiting for the good girl nod. That I kept my voice level. There will be no lifting. Not yours. Not mine. Not today. Mr. Ellis clicked his pen closed. One small sound that felt like a key turning. We're done here, he said. Any further discussion goes through my office. No more doorstep plans. No boxes. No unannounced helpers. The meeting emptied itself. On the sidewalk, Shannon jabbed a message into her phone with the force of a stamp. Linda paused at the door, opened her mouth, then shut it again and followed her daughter to the sea. Aired, I in the quiet of the parking lot. The maple leaf in my pocket felt heavier than paper. I drove home the long way, past the park Mark loved, past the corner store that always kept his favorite gum by the register. The house met me the way houses do when you choose them. By not moving. I hung the spare key back on its hook inside the door and slid the home folder onto the counter where sunlight could sit on it. The plan they brought had been told no. Plans like that don't die. They looked for side doors. I made tea and waited for which door they'd try next. They didn't come to the front this time. They tried the gaps, the little places where a life can be nudged without a knock. First came a cheery text from Shannon. She'd help by forwarding my mail to her place so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. 5 minutes later, a change of address slip appeared in my mailbox with my name and her apartment. It felt like someone had put their hand on my pockets. I drove straight to the post office with the form in a clear sleeve, the way you carry a bug you don't want escaping. The clerk read it once, stamped it void, and put a bright note on my address. No forwarding unless signed by resident. Anyone else tries? She said. We hold it and call you. Boring ink. Beautiful lock. On my way home, customer service music became my soundtrack. I called electric, water, internet one by one, and added the same line to each. No changes without my ID in person. Agents read back the note like a vow. I wrote call times in my home folder margins so the day couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. By dusk, a white van idled at my curb again. A man with a ring of keys stood by the gate, eyes on his work order. Linda hovered nearby, palms up like this was a favor. We'll just get a copy made so drop-offs are smoother, she said. Smoother is a word people use when they mean shortcut. I opened the main door and kept the storm door latched. Who hired you? I asked the locksmith. He showed me the paper. Shannon's name. I need the owner, he said. I pointed to the deed copy on my hall table and then to me. He lowered his tools. Then I'm not turning a screw. He tipped his cap to Linda, apologized, and left the way decent workers do when a job isn't a job after all. That night my phone pinged. If you're going to be difficult, at least put the utilities in my name so the kids don't have outages. I took a screenshot for the side doors folder and replied with one sentence I could live with next week. No one touches my mail, my bills, or my locks. At 9, An email from Mr. Ellis landed like a doorstop, a short letter addressed to all parties. It said the policy pays to me and can't be redirected. The deed lists me. He is supervising a small education fund Mark set up for Shannon's kids years ago. Any tampering with mail, locks, or accounts would be considered harassment and documented. He copied everyone. The send line felt like a gavel. The family thread went quiet in that heavy way kitchens do after a pot boils over and someone turns off the flame. I turned off the porch light, hung the spare key back on its hook inside, and put the home folder on the counter where the morning finds things worth keeping. The front door didn't need a speech. It just held. She came alone this time. No boxes, no clipboard, no cousin hovering at the curb. Linda stood on my porch in a cardigan I'd seen at Thanksgiving, holding a card with flowers on the front and the kind of careful smile people use when they're afraid of being turned away. The morning had that washed clean light after a night of wind. The maple out front was shedding one leaf at a time like it was counting. "I brought something," she said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I opened the main door, left the storm door latched for a heartbeat, then clicked it open and stepped aside. "Come in," I said, "as a guest." The card said, "Think of the children," in looping script. Inside, she'd written only their names, Shannon's 2 kids, and a short line. They missed their uncle's yard. No arrows, no orders. I made tea because my hands needed an honest job. The kettle's slow rise filled the kitchen with a sound that wasn't a threat. That we sat at the table where I'd been keeping the home folder like a book you reread when the plot turns mean. I slid the folder aside and set down the only page I'd kept separate, tucked inside the quiet box since that first night. Mark's note in his blocky hand. "If life turns loud, start with paper." Linda's fingers hovered over the letters. "Then touch them the way you touch a photo of someone you're trying to remember without crying." He wrote like his father, she murmured, soft as dust on a windowsill. I took out Mr. Ellis's summary and turned to the paragraph that never gets loud. The education fund Mark set up years ago for Shannon's kids. Small but steady, managed out of the lawyer's office. No drama. No stage. He didn't forget them, I said. He just didn't trade my front door for a story. She looked at the line until the ink might as well have been stitched. The fight that had lived in her shoulders since the pie on my porch started to leak out, slow as a faucet you finally fix. "Shannon thinks plans make things better," she said. "I follow plans." "I don't," I said, and the kettle clicked like punctuation. I poured. "We held hot mugs the way you hold a truce before you know if it will stand." She glanced toward the living room, toward the crooked frame Mark always promised to fix and never did, toward the scuff on the baseboard where he banged the ladder and laughed himself pink. Her voice changed shape. "He loved that maple," she said. "Said the shade would land exactly on the steps by September." She smiled, small and real. He was right. I nodded. The yard was right now, green, a little messy, honest. She folded the card closed and lined the edge with the table seam like a person trying to be precise again. "Could I sit under that tree sometimes?" she asked. "Not today. Just when it's not heavy. I could bring the kids and not change anything." "As a guest," I said, and the word felt like a key we had both decided to keep where it belongs. She nodded. "As a guest." For a while we didn't talk. The house did the talking, settling sounds in the walls. The clock in the hall that runs 3 minutes fast on purpose because Mark liked to feel early to something. The faint whisper of leaves deciding which branch they loved most. Linda set her palm flat on the table, not claiming, just steadying herself. And I realized it was the first time she'd sat here without trying to move me. She stood to leave and paused by the door where the spare key hangs inside. Her eyes flicked to it, and then away, like a person who has learned a rule and intends to keep it. On the porch, she took a breath like air tastes different once you stop pushing it into rooms it doesn't fit. "I'll tell Shannon about the fund," she said. "I'll tell her. I was a guest." That last part sounded like learning. I walked her out. The maple threw thin stripes across the steps, right on schedule. A leaf let go and landed between our shoes. She picked it up, turned it once, and tucked it into the card with the children's names. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. After she left, the house felt wider without being emptier. I put Mark's note back behind the quiet box envelope and slid Mr. Ellis's summary into the home folder where all the calm lives now. I wrote one fresh line on a sticky note and pressed it to the fridge under Grandma's lemon magnet. "Guests at the front." Paper on the table. Shade for the kids. Then I stepped onto the porch and sat on the warm step where September was doing exactly what Mark had promised it would. The day held. The rule held. I did too. Morning started with paperwork instead of panic. I walked to the post office with yesterday's voided slip and asked for the extra lock I'd read about but never used. The clerk slid a form across and stamped it hold if not signed by resident. If anyone files a change for you again, she said, we freeze it and call. A boring sentence felt like a seatbelt. From there I called electric, water, and internet from the kitchen table and added one plain line to each account. No changes without my ID in person. Each rep read it back slow, and I wrote their names in the home folder margin like keeping a guest book for sanity. The house felt quieter with every checkbox that clicked shut. By lunch, Mr. Ellis had sent a new summary letter to everyone. It said what good letters say: short, specific, final. The policy pays to me and cannot be redirected. The deed lists me. The education fund for Shannon's kids remains active under his office. Any more assistance with my mail, locks, or bills would be documented as harassment. He copied the whole list. The send line sounded like a door closing softly on a windy day. That should have been the end of the day. Instead, the quiet found a seam. At3, a white van rolled up to the curb with the engine still ticking. A different lock guy stepped out, reading from a work order like a script he didn't write. Shannon stayed in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, fingers drumming. Linda wasn't there. The man glanced at the paper and then at me on the porch. Here to swap a cylinder, he said. Says it's for school runs. Who signed that job? I asked that he read the name. Not mine. Then you're not swapping a thing, I said, and I let the storm door stay shut between us so the house could say it, too. He studied the brass, the hinge, the woman behind glass who wasn't moving. I need the owner, he finally said. I raised my hand. That's me. He nodded once, tucked his tools away, and told the van, no go. The engine eased back from its pretend purr. Shannon lowered her window 2 inches. They missed their uncle's yard, she called, as if that sentence could turn a key. So bring them, I said, as guests. Her mouth pinched. Then she put the van in drive and left without answering. Like the road might finish the conversation for her. The driveway felt too quiet after the tires faded. I stood there a minute, watching the maple argue with the breeze and thinking how easy it is to make your door only say no until it forgets how to say anything else. That's not how Mark and I built this place. So I took out my chalk bucket and drew roads on the walk the way he used to. A loop, a tiny bridge, a parking square labeled ice cream. I set a cooler of lemonade under the maple and texted Shannon exactly 3 lines. Drop them at the front. Pick them up at the front. Just the kids. 15 minutes later, the van came back, this time like a question. The back door slid, and 2 little humans tumbled out with shoelaces alive and faces set to cautious. Shannon stayed behind the wheel. Front, I reminded. She gave me a stare that could bruise fruit and a shrug that said she'd be timing me. I waved the kids and we made a city on the sidewalk. We drove chalk cars beneath the bridge and parked them at ice cream until our knees were the same dusty blue. We kicked a scuffed soccer ball until the laughter forgot who was supposed to be mad at whom. The maple laid stripes of shade across their shoulders like a blanket that knows its job. When they asked for their uncle's favorite game, I taught them the one where you find 5 green things, then 5 red, then 5 that make you think of someone you miss. They picked grass, a swing, and the sky for that last one. That felt right. Shannon's window stayed up. She watched like a meter maid. When the hour ended, I walked the kids to the curb. Front to front, I said, and buckled them in while she stared at a point past my ear. We'll do this again, I told the kids, loud enough for the windshield to hear. Same rules. The van left. The chalk road stayed. I hosed the dust off the steps and set the empty cups in the sink. My phone buzzed, Linda this time. Thank you for the shade. No plan. No box. Just 5 words that landed where they should. I hung the spare key back on its hook inside the door and slid the home folder into the drawer with the quiet box so the 2 spines could keep each other company. Then I wrote a note for the fridge under Grandma's lemon magnet. Say no at the lock. Say yes to the yard. Guests, not plans. The house felt like a person exhaling after a long-held breath. It had said no where it needed to. It had stayed kind where it could, and for the first time since casseroles. The quiet didn't feel like waiting for the next knock. Mr. Ellis called it a wrap-up, The kind of meeting that leaves no loose nails to catch on. His conference room felt like a quiet garage, solid table, chairs that don't squeak, a window that lets daylight do most of the talking. I brought the home folder and the maple leaf that had dried to a soft brown curl in my pocket. They arrived smaller than before. Shannon without her clipboard, Linda with a canvas tote instead of a plan. Two cousins waited in the hall and didn't try to hover. Mr. Ellis slid a one-page letter to the center. Short lines, no adjectives. Policy, pays to Natalie. No reassignment. Deed, title in Natalie's name. No shared interest, education fund. Active for Shannon's kids, managed by this office. Payouts as scheduled. Conduct, tampering with mail. Locks or bills will be logged and treated as harassment that he initialed the bottom and tapped the page once with his pen like a gavel that doesn't need to be loud. Shannon, reach for the old story. We only want what's best for the kids, but it didn't have anywhere to sit in this room. Mr. Ellis opened a slim folder I hadn't seen and laid out a printout of upcoming fund. Disbursements, dates, amounts. The whole path from quiet account to school shoes and piano lessons. This, he said, is how Mark made space for them without taking hers. The sentence landed like a level on a shelf, bubble-centered. No wobble. Linda looked at the schedule the way you look at a photograph you forgot you owned. Something in her face unhooked from the habit of arguing. He planned, she said, not a question. He did, Mr. Ellis answered. For all of you. Shannon's mouth pressed into that thin line that means a person has run out of verbs. She opened her tote, pulled out a bundle of the fake programs, the ones we'd shredded, and then stopped halfway like the air had reminded her. She set them back in the bag and zipped it shut. We won't use these, she said to the table more than to me. Good, Mr. Ellis said, and moved on. He slid a final page across. Contact rules, 3 lines that could fit on a fridge magnet. Front door, not side. Guest, not planner. Written request through this office only. We all signed. Not a peace treaty. A map. On the way out, Linda paused with her palm on the doorframe, as if she were asking the wood for permission. She turned to me and tried a new sentence on her tongue. When I came by, she said, I was a guest. The word looked right on her. You were, I said. You are. In the parking lot, wind pushed a scatter of leaves in a small, bright circle. Shannon walked ahead, staring at the asphalt like it owed her an answer. Linda tucked the one-page letter into her tote as carefully as people tuck in babies. I drove home the long way, past the corner store that still keeps Mark's favorite gum by the register. Inside the house, I slid Mr. Ellis's wrap-up on top of the home folder and set both beside the quiet box. Paper beside paper. Spine beside spine. The door didn't feel like a lock anymore. The IT felt like a choice that would be easy to keep. The house was quiet in the right way. Coffee. Sunlight on the floor. The soft tick of the hall clock that runs a little fast because Mark liked being early to things. I took the spare key from the dish by the door and hung it back on its hook inside, where it belongs. Little rituals fix big rooms. I sent one text to Shannon. Drop them at the front. Pick them up at the front. Just the kids. No speeches. She pulled to the curb, windows up, engine idling like she was timing me. The kids hopped out in mismatched socks and hope. We chalked a city on the walk, loops, a wobbly bridge, a square labeled ice cream, and kicked the scarred soccer ball until the maple laid striped shade across their shoulders like it had been hired for that job. When they asked for their uncle's favorite game, I taught them ours. 5 green things, 5 red things, 5 things that make you think of someone you miss. They picked grass, a bike bell, and sky. That felt right. Linda came later, alone, cardigan sleeves pushed to her elbows, tote tucked under one arm. She stopped at the gate and waited. I waved her in. She crossed the yard slow, like the grass might remember her footsteps. We sat under the maple with paper cups of lemonade and let the tree do most of the talking. He was right about the shade, she said. September puts it right on the steps. She set her palm on the warm concrete, like a person taking a promise. Shannon stayed in the car. When the hour ended, I walked the kids back and buckled them in. Same rules next time, I said, loud enough for the windshield to carry it home. Front to front. Guest, not planner. She nodded without looking at me and drove away with the windows reflecting only sky. Inside, I slid Mr. Ellis's wrap-up letter on top of the home folder and tucked both beside the quiet box, spines lined up like good neighbors. On the fridge, under Grandma's lemon magnet, I kept the 3 lines that held: front door, not side; guest, not planner. Paper on the table. Evening fell the way it's supposed to, slow, honest. I washed chalk from my hands and left a faint blue crescent on the towel I'll never bleach out. In the hall, the clock ticked its sure little seconds. The porch light came on without being asked. The house felt exactly like itself, that we didn't win a war. We kept a home, and the people who love us know how to enter it now. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.